Imagine walking into one of the most expensive restaurants in the city, only to be treated like a nobody. That's exactly what happened to Keanu Reeves. But what he did next, no one saw it coming. He was judged for his simple clothes. He was mocked by a snobby waiter. But instead of getting angry, Keanu did something that left everyone speechless. What happened next will shock you. It was a cold evening in New York City, and Keanu Reeves had just finished a long day of meetings. He wasn't one for extravagance, but his business associate had recommended an upscale French restaurant near Central Park. Reluctantly, he decided to treat himself to a quiet dinner before heading back to his hotel. Keanu, dressed in his usual casual attire, dark jeans, a slightly worn leather jacket, and a plain black t-shirt, walked into La Maison Royale, a restaurant known for its exclusivity. The kind of place where reservations were made months in advance and patrons arrived in designer suits, escorted by personal chauffeurs. As he entered, he noticed the dim golden lighting, the soft hum of a jazz quartet playing in the background, and the clinking of fine crystal glasses. A few heads turned, but not in recognition, rather in disapproval. Keanu was used to blending in, and he preferred it that way. He walked toward the hostess stand with his usual humility. The hostess, a tall woman with a sharp gaze, looked him up and down, her lips pursed. "Do you have a reservation?" she asked, her tone indifferent. Keanu smiled politely. "No, but I was hoping I could get a table for one. Just a quiet meal." She raised an eyebrow. "Sir, our restaurant is fully booked for the evening. We don't take walk-ins." Keanu nodded, understanding. "That's all right. I appreciate it," he said, already turning to leave. But just as he did, an elderly couple approached the hostess stand. "Ah, Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore." The hostess suddenly changed her tone to one of warmth and excitement. "It's so wonderful to see you again. Your usual table is ready." Keanu glanced at the restaurant, noticing several empty tables. He wasn't one to make a scene, so he simply smiled to himself and walked toward the exit. As Keanu reached the door, a waiter, young, well-groomed, and clearly proud of his position in such an elite establishment, brushed past him with a smirk. "Better try somewhere else, buddy," he muttered under his breath, just loud enough for Keanu to hear. Keanu paused for a moment, then turned back, his usual calm demeanor unshaken. "Do you treat all your customers this way?" he asked gently. The waiter scoffed. "We just have a certain standard here. It's not a burger joint, you know." Keanu could see the arrogance in the waiter's eyes, but instead of engaging, he simply smiled. "I see. Well, I hope you have a great night." At that moment the restaurant manager, a well-dressed man in his 50s, approached, having overheard the exchange. "What's the problem here?" he asked, looking between the waiter and Keanu. The waiter spoke first, chuckling. "No problem, sir. This gentleman was just about to leave." Keanu, ever gracious, nodded. "It's all right. I understand that this place has certain expectations." The manager studied him for a moment, then his eyes widened slightly. Recognition flickered across his face. "Wait, are you Keanu Reeves?" Keanu chuckled softly. "That's me." The manager's expression shifted immediately. "Oh my goodness, Mr. Reeves. Please, I apologize for the misunderstanding. We would be honored to have you dine with us. Let me get you the best table." Keanu held up his hand, stopping him gently. "No need. I really was just looking for a quiet meal. But I think I'll go somewhere else." The manager turned toward the waiter, who was now pale with embarrassment. "You were rude to Mr. Reeves?" he asked, his voice sharp. The waiter stammered. I didn't know who he was." Keanu chuckled again, shaking his head. "It shouldn't matter who I am. Everyone deserves to be treated with kindness." With that, He turned and left the restaurant, leaving the manager fuming and the waiter standing awkwardly, realizing the mistake he had made. Keanu walked a few blocks down the street, eventually spotting a small Italian bistro tucked between two towering buildings. Its warm lights and rustic decor gave it a welcoming charm. He stepped inside, immediately feeling the difference in atmosphere. An older man, likely the owner, greeted him with a warm smile. "Welcome. Table for one." Keanu smiled back. "Yes, please." Within minutes, he was seated at a cozy corner table with a plate of freshly baked bread and a glass of house red wine. The waitstaff was attentive but not overbearing, treating him like any other guest. As he enjoyed his meal, an exquisite plate of homemade pasta, Keanu reflected on the evening. He wasn't angry about what had happened at the luxury restaurant. He had seen this kind of behavior before. Some people judged based on appearances, and others simply let arrogance get in the way of kindness. After finishing his meal, Keanu called the owner over. "This place is wonderful. Thank you for the great service." The owner beamed. "We're honored to have you here, Mr. Reeves." Keanu reached into his pocket, pulling out his credit card, but then he paused. Instead of just paying the bill, he had an idea. "How many people are working here tonight?" he asked. The owner looked confused but answered, "About 12, including the kitchen staff." Keanu nodded. He calculated quickly and then wrote a number down on the bill. When the owner saw it, his eyes widened in shock. "Sir, this is a $10,000 tip." Keanu grinned. "You guys deserve it. Your kindness is worth more than any fancy restaurant could offer." The owner, stunned, shook his head. "I don't know what to say. Thank you. Truly." Keanu simply smiled, put on his jacket, and walked out into the night, leaving behind a restaurant full of amazed and grateful employees. Word spread quickly. The small bistro staff couldn't believe what had just happened. They shared the story, and soon, social media caught on. Meanwhile, back at *LLA Maison Royale, the waiter who had insulted Keanu was facing the consequences. The manager, furious over the incident, reprimanded him in front of the entire staff. "You turned away one of the kindest men in Hollywood because of your arrogance. This is not how we treat guests." The waiter, now deeply embarrassed, could only nod. He had learned a harsh lesson about judging people too quickly. A few days later, the media picked up the story, and La Maison Royale faced backlash online. Customers began canceling reservations, and the restaurant's reputation suffered. In contrast, the little Italian bistro Keanu had visited saw a surge of new customers, all eager to support the place where kindness had been valued over status. When asked about the incident in an interview, Keanu simply shrugged. "I wasn't looking for special treatment. I just wanted a meal." The way people treat others, especially those they think are less important, says a lot about their character. And just like that, Keanu Reeves had once again proven why he was not just a Hollywood legend, but a legend of kindness and humility in real life. Keanu Reeves walked out of La Maison Royale without a hint of anger or frustration. He had faced arrogance before, and this was just another reminder of how easily people judged others based on appearances. Instead of letting the rude treatment bother him, he decided to do something that would send a message, not just to the waiter who dismissed him, but to everyone who believed wealth determined worth. As he strolled down the dimly lit streets of New York, Keanu spotted a small Italian bistro glowing warmly against the night. The handwritten menu outside displayed simple yet delicious meals, and the inviting scent of freshly baked bread filled the air. It was the kind of place where laughter flowed freely, where people weren't judged by the brands they wore. Keanu pushed open the wooden door, and a tiny bell chimed overhead. Inside, the restaurant had a cozy charm. Checkered tablecloths, candles flickering in glass holders, and the soothing sound of soft jazz playing in the background. A middle-aged man with kind eyes and flour-dusted hands greeted him from behind the counter. "Welcome, sir." Table for one. Keanu smiled. Yes, please. Unlike the cold and pretentious luxury restaurant, this place didn't hesitate to welcome him. He was treated like any other guest, not a Hollywood superstar, not a nobody, just a man looking for a warm meal. Keanu ordered a plate of homemade pasta, a fresh garden salad, and a glass of house wine. As he ate, he watched the staff move around with passion and dedication. The young waitress, though clearly exhausted, still managed to serve each customer with a bright smile. The chef in the open kitchen hummed as he cooked, sprinkling a bit of extra seasoning with a flick of the wrist. The elderly couple at the corner table held hands as they shared a single dessert. This was what dining was supposed to feel like, genuine, warm, and full of heart. As Keanu finished his meal, he called over the owner, who had been personally checking on tables throughout the night. "Sir, I hope everything was to your liking," the owner said politely, though there was a nervousness in his tone. Perhaps he didn't know who Keanu was, or maybe he wasn't used to customers giving feedback. Keanu nodded. "It was perfect. The best meal I've had in a long time." The owner smiled, relieved. "That means a lot. We do our best." Keanu paused, glancing around the restaurant. "How many people are working tonight?" The owner looked confused but answered, 12, including my wife in the kitchen." Keanu reached into his pocket, pulled out his credit card, and handed it to the owner. But instead of just paying for his meal, he leaned in and quietly said something that made the owner's eyes go wide. When the receipt was printed, the owner's hands trembled. The total bill was modest, just under $100, but the tip Keanu left? $10,000. This must be a mistake," the owner stammered. "Sir, I can't accept this." Keanu shook his head with a smile. "It's not a mistake. You and your team deserve it. Thank you for treating me with kindness." The owner was speechless. The waitress, who had been clearing a nearby table, gasped audibly, covering her mouth with her hands. The other staff members stopped what they were doing, staring in shock. Keanu simply stood up, put on his jacket, and before anyone could protest, he gave a small nod of appreciation and walked out into the night. The next morning, news of Keanu's act of generosity spread like wildfire. The small Italian bistro, once just a hidden gem in the city, found itself flooded with customers wanting to support the place where Keanu Reeves had dined. People shared the story online, praising Keanu not just for his generosity but for his message. True worth isn't measured by appearances or wealth, but by how we treat others. Meanwhile, back at La Maison Royale *, the luxury restaurant where Keanu had been turned away, the situation was quite different. Customers who had read about the incident began canceling their reservations. Online reviews slammed the restaurant for its arrogance, calling out the snobby treatment of customers. The manager, realizing the gravity of the situation, called an emergency staff meeting. The waiter who had insulted Keanu sat stiffly in his chair, his face pale. "You turned away one of the most respected actors in the world," the manager said, shaking his head. "Not because he didn't have a reservation. Not because there weren't tables available. But because of how he looked." The waiter swallowed hard. I didn't know it was him." "That's the problem," the manager shot back. "It shouldn't matter if it was Keanu Reeves or a regular person off the street. We should treat everyone with respect." The restaurant's reputation took a serious hit. The arrogance that had once been its defining characteristic was now its downfall. Customers began flocking to smaller, friendlier establishments, places where kindness mattered more than status. Days later, during an interview, a journalist brought up the story. "Keanu, everyone's talking about what happened at that fancy restaurant. People are saying you handled it with such grace. Why didn't you call them out publicly?" Keanu chuckled. "Because that wouldn't have solved anything. Look, I wasn't looking for special treatment. I just wanted a meal. The way people treat others, especially those they think aren't important, says a lot about their character. I chose to go where kindness was valued. The journalist nodded. And that $10,000 tip? That was incredible. Keanu shrugged. They deserved it. It wasn't about the money, it was about recognizing good people. The interview clip went viral, further solidifying Keanu's reputation as one of the kindest, most down-to-earth celebrities in the world. Keanu Reeves didn't just teach the rude waiter a lesson. He reminded the world that respect and kindness are far more valuable than wealth and status. And in the end, the luxury restaurant that looked down on him learned a hard truth. Real class isn't about expensive suits or exclusive menus. It's about how you treat people, no matter who they are. And that's why Keanu Reeves will always be more than just a movie star. He's a legend. This story proves one thing. Real respect isn't about money, it's about how you treat people. Would you have handled this situation like Keanu? Comment below, let's talk about it. And if you believe kindness should always win, smash that like button right now. Subscribe and turn on all notifications, because trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Keanu Reeves smiling in an interview, text overlay, only legends subscribe. Are you one of them?